Today on Sovereign Soul, I want to talk about a spiritual law known as the Law of Increment. Now, the Law of Increment is something that you see in nature, and it's a law that exists spiritually. So I teach and train shamanism. I teach and train spiritual sovereignty. And basically, what this is as above, so below. So you look for witnesses of truth all around you, because if anything's true about something, then it's always true. And something that I like to say all of the time is truth can't be debated. Truth simply is. Belief can be debated, but truth can't. Truth simply is. And so when we look at the law of increments and we see the witness of it in many aspects and many facets of life, then it can teach us something about how to live and code our life. Now, the law of increments basically says that it takes step by step, day by day, moment by moment to grow, to expand, to achieve. And what I see often is we punish ourselves for not being where we want to be, or we have this lofty goal, or we have this idea of what life should be, and we get so frustrated that it's taking too much time, or we're not there yet, or things are moving too slowly. But the law of increments also is teaching us about frequency. Now, I don't want to go too crazy here today on this podcast, but I want to share a few different things. So when you plant a seed in the earth, the seed then has to crack open, it has to grow, it has to be watered daily, it has to get nourishment from the light, it has to get it from the sun, it has to have temperatures. If you want to have healthy teeth, you need to brush your teeth and floss every single day. Stay away from eating too much candy or soda or things that damage your teeth. If you want to build muscles, you can't just do it overnight. You have to exercise every day, work those muscles every single day. If you want to lose weight, you have to do it, has to be over time. This is part of living in the physical dimension. Now, I am a huge advocate of miracles. I believe in miracles. I feel like I've witnessed miracles. So miracles can happen, and I feel like that's leaping from one frequency to another or dimension to another, but that's not this episode. When we discuss the law of increments, it's the mighty things are done through the small things. And a lot of times we think, oh, if this big cataclysm happened, or I would tell the truth under these circumstances, or I would never do that. And you'll see that you will do what you do on a small level. So one of the stories that I actually put in my book, Sovereign Soul, and then through editing, I decided to remove it, is the biblical story of David. And I'll tell you, if I remember at the end of this podcast, why I just decided to remove it. But when we hear the story, if you were raised in a Christian childhood, a lot of times the story that's taught or the lesson that's taught with David is the small can overcome the big. Like no matter how weak that you think you are, you can overcome the big guy with God, with your faith in God. And that's the story that I hear repeated. And I heard it all through my childhood. And when I hear and listen to Christian speeches, they often talk about that the trust through David and this tiny little guy could take on even the biggest obstacles. And I think that that's a really, really, really good message, but I feel like the law of increment is left out. So David just didn't walk up onto that battlefield and take out Goliath. For weeks, months, and years, he guarded the herd. He protected the sheep with his slingshot. It's not that he picked up a slingshot on the day that he fought Goliath, on the day that the army came. He didn't pick that up off the ground, choose a stone at random, and toss it, and it was a miracle. It wasn't. He actually, through day-to-day practice, his aim, his shot, he knew exactly what stones to grab. He knew exactly what size to grab. He knew exactly how every stone would throw. How could he perfect his aim to kill the giant? How could he do that? It wasn't through guesswork. It was because he had shot that shot a million times. What did he do when he was bored outside watching the sheep? He practiced his sling work. There's legends that he took on a lion, legends that he took on a wolf, we don't know if that was real or not. We don't even know if the story of David is real or not. What we do know is that the lesson and the metaphor, the law of increment is to achieve great things, you must do small things. And it cannot, and it doesn't, you don't get the fanfare for the small things. You don't get the fanfare and the applause when you're doing the small things. You have to trust that you're doing something greater. You don't build a cathedral in one day, it's brick upon brick. You don't build a monument in one day, it's stone upon stone. And so when we look at David's life, as we return back to that, day by day, he wasn't relying upon armor, he wasn't relying upon wealth, he wasn't relying upon power. He was relying upon his day-to-day practice, his regular commitment and discipline to refine his shot. Now, I see this when we're working spiritually. We think, I want to see the angel, I want the heavens to open, I want the answer. And I'm witnessing people trying to waylay the law of increment as a shamanic practitioner and teacher who advocates substance free, who teaches substance free. I see that a lot of shamanic people who are learning the shamanic way want to waylay the law of increment by doing plant medicine journeys and things like that. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm not saying that's right and wrong. What I am saying is the law is the law. Like, we shift through day to day, we shift through measured and disciplined practice. And for one person, it might look like sitting in a church pew every single Sunday, singing songs and serving their neighbors. That is a very legitimate spiritual pathway to achieve the spiritual mastery and ascension levels that we all want to emulate. And for another person, it could be beating your drum every single Sunday, and it could be doing singing bowls and sound bowls every single morning and serving your community in that way. For another person, it's drum circles. And there's a trillion other ways. As many people that have ever lived, that's how many ways there are to connect to source. But it happens through the law of increment. Now, when I was raised that there's people with certain gifts, and if they're psychic or if they're intuitive or if they can see ghosts and angels, then they must be really good people. They must be spiritually gifted. As I've now gone through meeting hundreds of people that can do that, who are good and bad, who are doing good things and bad things, now I understand that a spiritual gift doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you are a good person. But I also know that through the law of increment, if you seek to refine your opening of your intuition, of your third eye, if you seek to refine your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, all of these things, then you can open that. You can grow those gifts, your spiritual connection, that pathway to peace, inner peace, can all be found. Now, circling back, why I removed the story of David from the book is because even though I really love the lesson that we can learn of David and Goliath, as he continued on in his life, he waylaid, or he began to trust in the materialism of the world. And he became, I believe, distorted by power, by riches, by wealth. And David ultimately was a rapist and a murderer. And so even though as a youth, he practiced the law of increment and was a great example to us of faith, we also have to remember who he was. And so I decided to remove that because I don't want to have in my book about spiritual sovereignty, even though this is a good lesson, to revere somebody who, while they did good in their life, they also raped women and murdered their husbands. Those